An intern presenting to Amazon? The VP laughed. Let's have someone qualified handle this. I started packing my materials. The door opened. Maya, Amazon CEO, walked straight to me. I came personally because your logistics solution saved US $4 million last quarter. Ready to discuss the expansion? The VP choked when he said, You're the M. Patel who redesigned our Pacific Northwest distribution algorithm? Andrew Jassi's voice carried across the boardroom like a thunderclap, making everyone freeze, especially VP Harrison Clark, whose smug expression melted faster than Seattle snow in unexpected sunshine. The CEO of Amazon stood in the doorway of our conference room, his presence turning the glossy corporate space into something electric, dangerous, pivotal. I straightened my shoulders, still clutching the presentation materials Harrison had just told me to hand over to someone who actually belongs in this room. The laser pointer in my hand suddenly felt like Excalibur, and I was about to find out if I was worthy of wielding it. Yes, Mr. Jassi. Maya Patel. Though your procurement team knows me as M. Patel Consulting. The boardroom at Sterling Logistics felt too small suddenly, even though it was designed to impress with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Seattle. The morning fog had lifted, revealing Mount Rainier in the distance, but nobody was looking at the view anymore. They were all staring at me, the intern who'd been fetching coffee 10 minutes ago, now being personally addressed by one of the most powerful CEOs in tech. Harrison's face went through several colors, white, red, purple, before settling on a concerning shade of gray. Mr. Jassi, I think there's been some confusion. Maya is our intern. She's the anonymous consultant who saved my company $4 million in the last quarter alone. Jassi stepped fully into the room, followed by two executives I recognized from tech blogs, Sandra Liu, Amazon's Chief Supply Chain Officer, and Marcus Rodriguez, VP of Innovation, the one whose algorithm reduced delivery times by 18% in the Pacific Northwest while cutting fuel costs by 23%. I set my materials back on the table with steady hands, though my heart was attempting to break free from my chest. Those numbers have improved since implementation. We're now at 19.2% time reduction and 24.7% fuel savings. I've been monitoring and adjusting the algorithm based on real-world performance data. Of course you have, Sandra Liu said, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. Because that's what brilliant engineers do. They iterate. She turned to Harrison. Funny how your emails always came from H. Clark when discussing the M. Patel solutions. Almost like you were taking credit for someone else's work. The room went silent except for the hum of the air conditioning and what I swear was the sound of Harrison's career imploding. David Sterling, our CEO and the man who'd hired me as an intern 6 months ago, cleared his throat from his position at the head of the table. Unlike Harrison, he was smiling, the satisfied expression of a chess player whose gambit was about to pay off. Gentlemen, ladies, David said smoothly, perhaps I should clarify. Maya has been working with us in a unique capacity. She's simultaneously our intern and an independent contractor. It's an unusual arrangement that's about to become much more standard. An intern, Jassi repeated, his tone suggesting he found the word amusing. Tell me, Miss Patel, how does a logistics algorithms expert end up as an intern? I met his gaze directly. At 24, I learned that powerful men either wanted you to cower or challenge them. There was rarely a middle ground, because when you a young woman of color with a degree from a state school instead of MIT, doors don't open as easily. So you build your own door. Mine happened to be shaped like an internship that let me access the problems I wanted to solve. State school? Marcus Rodriguez pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. University of Washington, magna cum laude, computer science with a minor in supply chain management. Thesis on dynamic route optimization in urban environments. Published in 3 peer-reviewed journals before graduation. He looked up. That's more impressive than most MIT grads I know. But not impressive enough to get past HR screening at most companies, I said. Including, ironically, Amazon. I applied 6 times. Never got past the initial resume review. Jassi's expression darkened. 6 times? Different positions, over 2 years. I even tailored each application specifically to the role, used all the right keywords, had professionals review my resume. I shrugged, the gesture more defiant than defeated. Your ATS system apparently doesn't recognize potential when it comes in a non-traditional package. But David recognized it, Sandra observed, studying our CEO with new interest. David leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. I met Maya at a coffee shop. She was working on her laptop, and I noticed she'd mapped out our delivery routes on her screen, publicly available data, but she'd identified inefficiencies we'd been struggling with for years. We struck up a conversation. 20 minutes later, I knew I needed her brain working on our problems. So you hired her as an intern? Harrison's voice cracked with indignation. Why not as an analyst or engineer? Because, I answered for David, we both knew that certain people, I glanced pointedly at Harrison, would never accept strategic input from a 24-year-old woman who didn't have the right pedigree. But they'd happily take credit for solutions discovered by their intern while she was organizing files. The air quotes around organizing files carried enough venom to poison a small city. Harrison's assistant, Jennifer, made a small sound that might have been a suppressed laugh. Show me, Jassy said suddenly. The expansion proposal Harrison was about to present, show me your real vision for it. I looked at David, who nodded. Then at Harrison, whose face suggested he was calculating whether unemployment benefits would cover his mortgage. Finally, I picked up the remote for the presentation screen. The current proposal, the one Harrison was prepared to present, is conservative. Safe. It would work. I clicked through his slides dismissively. But it's thinking inside the box. Amazon doesn't need inside-the-box thinking. You need revolution. Bold words, Sandra murmured. Back them up. I switched to my real presentation, the one I'd built at 3 a.m. in my studio apartment, fueled by Red Bull and righteous anger. The Pacific Northwest solution was just the beginning. What if we could apply dynamic optimization across all of Amazon's North American operations? Not just delivery routes, but warehouse organization, inventory prediction, even employee scheduling. The first slide showed a map of the United States covered in what looked like a living neural network, routes that shifted and adapted in real time based on dozens of variables. Traditional logistics thinks in straight lines, I explained, warming to my subject. Point A to point B, fastest route. But that's 20th century thinking. My algorithm thinks in probabilities. It predicts where packages will need to be before orders are placed, positions inventory dynamically, and creates flexible route networks that adapt to conditions minute by minute. That's impossible, Harrison interrupted. The computational power alone would require quantum computing capabilities, I finished. Which Amazon already has access to through AWS. I've run simulations using your public cloud services. The results are significant. I clicked to the next slide. Revenue projections that made even Jassy lean forward. A 34% reduction in delivery times nationwide. 41% reduction in fuel costs. 28% improvement in warehouse efficiency. And here's the beautiful part, it gets smarter every day. Machine learning means the system improves with each delivery, each customer interaction, each weather event. The initial investment. Marcus started. $47 million for full implementation, I said. ROI in 7 months. Full payback in 11 months. After that, pure profit. Approximately $400 million in savings annually, not counting increased customer satisfaction and market share growth from faster deliveries. The room was silent. I could hear my own heartbeat, see Harrison's hands trembling as he gripped the edge of the table. This was it, the moment where everything either changed or collapsed. How long have you been working on this? Jassy asked quietly. 6 months of active development. But really? Since the 3rd time Amazon rejected my application. I decided if I couldn't work for you, I'd solve your problems anyway. Just to prove I could. Sandra laughed, actually laughed. Spite-driven innovation. I love it. The legal implications, Harrison said desperately. If she developed this as our intern. I developed it as M. Patel Consulting, I corrected. Check my contract. Very specifically, any algorithmic solutions I create remain my intellectual property unless explicitly transferred. Sterling Logistics has been licensing my work, not owning it. David's smile widened. I insisted on that clause. Seemed only fair, considering the unique nature of our arrangement. Jassy stood, walking to the window. The room held its breath while he gazed out at the Seattle skyline. When he turned back, his expression was unreadable. Ms. Patel, what do you want? The question hung in the air like a challenge. What did I want? Vindication? Recognition? Revenge on everyone who'd overlooked me? I want to solve problems, I said simply. Real problems, not the simplified versions companies think young engineers can handle. I want access to data, computational resources, and the freedom to innovate without someone taking credit for my work. I paused, and I want every qualified candidate who has been screened out by biased systems to get a fair shot. You're asking me to overhaul our entire hiring process. I'm asking you to stop missing out on brilliant minds because they don't fit a predetermined mold. How many other M. Patels have you rejected? How many innovations have walked away because your front door was locked to anyone who didn't look right on paper? Harrison stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. You can't seriously be considering, Harrison. David's voice was steel wrapped in silk. Security is waiting outside to escort you to your office. You have 10 minutes to pack your personal items. What? You can't fire me over this. I'm not firing you over this. I'm firing you for taking credit for $4 million in savings you had nothing to do with. For presenting yourself as the architect of solutions you couldn't even understand, let alone create. And for almost losing us the most important partnership in our company's history because you couldn't see past your own ego. Harrison looked around the room for support, finding none. Even his assistant Jennifer was studiously examining her notepad. He straightened his tie, a nervous gesture I'd observed dozens of times when he was out of his depth. This is a mistake, he said finally. You're putting the future of this company in the hands of a child. No, Jassy spoke from the window, we're putting it in the hands of a genius who is smart enough to work around the obstacles you placed in her path. That's exactly the kind of thinking Amazon needs. Harrison left, his footsteps echoing down the hallway like a funeral march. The door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded distinctly final. Now then, Jassy returned to the table. Let's discuss terms. Amazon wants exclusive rights to your algorithm, all of it, not just the Pacific Northwest solution. No. The word dropped into the room like a stone into still water. Even David looked surprised. No? Sandra echoed. Exclusive rights would prevent me from solving similar problems for other companies, improving global logistics, reducing carbon footprints across multiple industries. That's too high a price for any single paycheck. I met Jassy's gaze. But I'll offer you first implementation rights and a 2-year non-compete for direct competitors. You get the advantage, but the technology eventually benefits everyone. And if we walk away? I smiled. Then you walk away from $400 million in annual savings. FedEx and UPS have also expressed interest. Less sophisticated infrastructure than Amazon, but sometimes that makes innovation easier to implement. You've already been in talks with them? Marcus sounded impressed despite himself. Preliminary conversations. I believe in backup plans. Jassy studied me for a long moment. What would it take to bring you to Amazon full-time? I don't want to work for Amazon, I said, ignoring David's sharp intake of breath. I want to work with Amazon. My own company, my own team, solving problems across the industry. Amazon is the flagship client, but not the only client. No. You're 24 years old. Mozart was dead at 35 and had already changed music forever. Age is irrelevant. Results matter. Sandra leaned forward. What about Sterling Logistics? I looked at David, who nodded encouragingly. We discussed this possibility late one night when the office was empty except for janitors and dreamers. Sterling becomes my first acquisition, I said. David transitions to chairman of the board for the new company. His team, minus Harrison, comes with us. They know my systems, they believe in the vision, and they deserve to benefit from what we've built together. The intern acquires the company, Marcus said wonderingly. There's a headline. The engineer acquires the company, I corrected. The fact that I had to pretend to be an intern to get in the door is the real story. Jassy returned to his seat. All right, Ms. Patel. You have my attention. Let's see your full vision. Not just logistics, everything. For the next 2 hours, I laid out a future where artificial intelligence and machine learning transformed not just how packages moved, but how entire supply chains thought. Where predictive algorithms reduced waste to near zero. Where dynamic optimization made same-day delivery standard, not premium. Where the environmental cost of commerce dropped by orders of magnitude. I showed them prototypes, simulations, projections. I answered every challenge, met every skeptical question with data and solutions. And through it all, I felt the weight of every rejection letter, every dismissive comment, every person who'd looked at me and seen an intern instead of an innovator. When I finished, the room was silent again. But it was a different silence, the kind that comes before lightning strikes. Jennifer, Jassy addressed Harrison's former assistant. I assume you've been supporting Ms. Patel's work? Jennifer straightened. Every analysis, every simulation. I've been her sounding board, data validator, and sometimes her reminder to eat lunch. Want a new job? I want to work for someone who values intelligence over appearances, Jennifer replied. So yes. Jassy stood. Ms. Patel, Sterling Logistics Board, I need to confer with my team. We'll have a proposal to you by end of business today. But I can tell you now, Amazon wants in. The only question is structure and terms. He paused at the door, looking back at me. 6 rejection letters? 6. I'll be having a conversation with our HR department. And Ms. Patel? When you build your company, do better than we did. I intend to. After the Amazon team left, the Sterling Logistics Board sat in stunned silence. David was the first to speak. Thoughts? I'm thinking, said CFO Margaret Walsh, that we're about to make a lot of money. I'm thinking, added CTO James Park, that we've been idiots. Maya's been here 6 months, and none of us except David saw what she was capable of. You saw what I wanted you to see, I said. An eager intern, working hard, learning the ropes. It was safer that way. Safer, Margaret repeated. God, what does it say about our industry that a brilliant young woman felt safer pretending to be an intern than revealing her capabilities? It says we need to change, David answered. And Maya's going to help us do that. My phone buzzed. A LinkedIn notification. Harrison had already updated his status to seeking new opportunities. The comments below were less than sympathetic. Apparently, Jennifer wasn't the only one who'd noticed his tendency to claim credit for others' work. Maya, James leaned forward. You could have exposed Harrison months ago. Why wait? Because exposing him would have made me the whistleblower in turn. Difficult. Trouble. Not a team player. I shrugged. Better to let him expose himself when the stakes were highest. Plus, it gave me time to document everything, build relationships with the people who actually did the work, and develop solutions too complex for him to steal. You played the long game. I played the only game available to someone in my position. And I won. By 5 p.m., the contracts were signed. Maya Patel Consulting was acquiring Sterling Logistics for a combination of cash and equity in the new company, Quantum Logistics Inc. Amazon committed to a 5-year partnership worth $300 million, with performance bonuses that could double that number. FedEx and UPS both wanted meetings within the week. As the office celebrated, champagne appeared from somewhere, possibly Jennifer's secret stash. I stepped onto the balcony. Seattle spread out before me, a city of innovation and impossible dreams. 6 months ago, I'd stood on a similar balcony, serving coffee to executives who looked through me like I was furniture. Regrets? David joined me, champagne flute in hand. No. Maybe one. Oh? I make terrible coffee. Harrison was right about that, at least. Jennifer's was always better. He laughed. Good thing you've got other skills. David, why did you really hire me? You could have brought me on as a consultant from the start. He was quiet for a moment. My daughter. She's brilliant, genuinely brilliant. But she's also 25, black, and female in an industry that's none of those things. She tells me stories about being overlooked, underestimated, pushed aside. I couldn't fix it for her, but when I met you, I thought maybe I could create one space where brilliance mattered more than bias. Thank you. Don't thank me. You did the work. I just unlocked the door. He raised his glass. To M. Patel, who saved Amazon $4 million while fetching coffee. To the future, I countered. Where no one has to hide their brilliance behind an intern badge. We toasted as the sun set over Seattle, painting the sky in shades of possibility. Tomorrow, the tech blogs would explode with the story. Interns secretly worth millions. The algorithm that amazed Amazon. From coffee runs to company owner, the Maya Patel story. But tonight, I had emails to send. To every young engineer who'd been rejected despite their qualifications. To every brilliant mind forced to hide behind lesser titles. To every person who'd been told they didn't belong in rooms where decisions were made. Oh? The subject line was simple: we're hiring. Brilliance required. Pedigree irrelevant. Because that's what revolution looks like in corporate America. Not always protests and proclamations. Sometimes it's an intern with a laptop and a logistics algorithm, playing the long game until the moment the CEO of Amazon walks through the door and calls you by name. The elevator dinged, and Jennifer appeared with a banker's box, Harrison's things. What should I do with these? I looked at the contents: executive desk toys, motivational posters about leadership, a coffee mug that read, "World's Best Boss." The detritus of a man who'd confused power with competence. Send them to him, I decided. With a note. Saying? Thank you for teaching me exactly what kind of leader not to be. Jennifer smiled. I'll handle it. Also, the Wall Street Journal wants a quote about the acquisition. I thought for a moment. Tell them, sometimes the best way to break down doors is to walk through them disguised as someone they re-expecting. But once you're inside, never forget who you really are. As night fell over Seattle, Quantum Logistics Incorporated was born. A company built on algorithms and anger, innovation and determination. A company where the intern could become the CEO, where brilliance mattered more than birthright, where the future was written in code by people who'd been told they didn't belong. Harrison's parking space was already being reassigned. By Monday, it would have a new nameplate: M. Patel, CEO. The M still stood for Maya. But now it also stood for something else. Metamorphosis.